this right here. This is take 3. Welcome to Tom's Hardcore Media. No thanks to any idiot that didn't tell me that my window was not on. Wrong one was on. If people don't tell me, that's their fucking fault. This stuff. Hopefully the computer won't restart. So you have to make do. I know about a lot of the evils of our government, keeping this stuff secret. That puts the worst criminals to shame compared to what we do. Government does. Again, this is probably another reason why they keep it secret. Let's see here. Let's go all over. Invite anybody to tell me their thoughts. Tell me what they think. Like I've said before, I've told some people what I know, and other people that have been abducted, and people that know stuff, is that there are certain things that I could tell them at the time, and there's stuff I wasn't going to tell them because telling them could give them nightmares, could scare them away from UFOs and other stuff. A lot of people cannot sleep at night with stuff that has happened to them, including me sometimes in my life as well. Let's get back into this.
HPMs to
take them down.
Craft.
Have we
Hardcore Media.
Purposely murdered?
Legal, fair use. I'm not going over this shit again. Anyways, I put my own experience as well. I've ruined the whole thing. Sorry. I put my own experience as well.
There was a conversation I had with someone who I trust, who got very emotional and described a friend of his dying on the moon. I've spoken to over a dozen people, probably 15 plus people, who operate, either have operated or are operating inside what we would call the legacy retrieval of non-human craft and reverse engineering program. I think one of the most galling, shocking moments for me was when people that I was talking to in the program, who are still in the program, admitted to me that we're using high pulse microwave weapons, HPMs, to
take them down.
Craft.
Have we purposely murdered other beings?
Oh God, that's a horrible thought, isn't it?
Have we?
I suspect we have.
For doing that.
I've asked them what happened to the beings, and I just get a squeamish look.
Do you believe that some of the people you've spoken to, Jake included, David Grush included, are closer to the program than they let on?
I can't say.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I think you just did.
Of course. Yeah.
When people know what I was talking about,
Sure.
I mean,
When you say when people know?
they will know. I'm pretty sure it'll become public.
Is it outside of the Five Eyes?
Oh, you could definitely see it on a satellite. It's a building.
Ross Coulthard is acting more like me than what he knows. It's like when you make that laugh and I know shit. Do I know shit? Yeah, I know shit. Yeah, that's funny. That's a funny question. He didn't used to have that. Me, I've had that for over 20 years.
It's a building.
It's a building. Is the building the shape of the craft?
Yeah. At 10:30 at night, he puts the blindfold over his eyes, and within a few seconds, he says, "I'm engaged." I said, "What do you mean you're engaged?" He says, "I'm in a craft." He says, "Horizon." And I look towards the horizon, and there are these two golden white orbs that just appear on the horizon. These objects do come closer. And I'm just like, holy hell.
Yeah.
I was excited. I thought, wow, that was really something. But
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed for Jordan because we hadn't seen what he said he was going to see, which was the blue hexagon. Almost simultaneously at the moment that I'm saying to Jordan, gee, real shame that we didn't see the blue hexagon, you see a blue hexagonal orb exactly as Jordan had predicted.
Is there a piece of information you wish you were never told?
Why is he smiling like that? Here, oh yeah.
Yeah, there is.
I was given the names of...
And it wasn't Jake. I was given the names of people who ordered the murder of his team.
They should be killed for. But it's like I said, the stuff that our government does to contractors, it's real. I've known this for decades. And stuff, I've seen stuff where I could like remote view and see stuff. I want people to know, more people to know about this stuff. I mean, I knew about this before Ross did, way before, decades before Ross Coulthard did. And people like me were crazy. Not only that, I've never been in the military, I've been around it. You know, people that worked inside of it, and stuff. So,
former military intelligence guy.
we really do have criminals and painkillers and people killed off that know too much and want to keep things a secret.
Which I can prove with IDD 214. It's fall of either sometime between 80 and 83. We can't remember for sure. We're coming back from a trip to the Ozarks, and we were on Highway 96 between Springfield and Joplin, heading west back towards Kansas, when suddenly we weren't. My mom remembers waking up behind the wheel of a moving car on a gravel farm road to learn that I was also ill. My sister, myself, the dog vomited, and my mom knew that she had lost time based on the dashboard clock reading. She knew time had passed. 2 weeks.
I wonder if they did that because of the dog. I think they're more afraid of the dog, and they just had it done to everybody.
Later, my mom saw a craft land in the park across the street from our house in the small town we lived in. And two beings got out of the vehicle and walked towards her in the park, and she had a telepathic communication experience with these two beings, and they gave the message that they were there to check on us and to make sure that we were doing okay. And two beings re-entered the craft, it took off and vanished. That's where my story starts.
All right, I think we can get started here. You good to go?
Let's screw this cat.
And then we can start the podcast.
Wow,
Welcome, Ross Coulthard.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for making the trek. Obviously, all the way from Australia. I know you've got an engagement coming up in in Los Angeles, which is still quite a way from where we are sitting right now.
Yeah, my brain is still somewhere over the Pacific, so I hope you're kind to me and not too ruthless as you ask me with questions.
Yeah, not too bad. I do have some questions here. I have some notes which I'll eventually defer to, but I have a feeling that our conversation is just going to flow quite naturally. We've been, sharing some time together prior to the podcast, went out for dinner, and lack of conversation wasn't necessarily a problem.
It was fantastic. It's actually really lovely to finally get to meet you, to be perfectly honest.
Likewise.
It's also really lovely to look behind the scenes. I've always died to see the Area 52 set, and I now know the secret of Area 52. It's great.
Yeah. Also, if you ever see me sort of peering over my shoulder, it isn't completely out of paranoia, but I am a one-man crew here, so I'm just making sure that everything is still rolling in case there are some technical difficulties. So it has nothing to do with me being bored by what you're saying, or
it's absolutely fine.
Don't take offense to any of that.
I do.
Yeah. Other than that, Ross, I mean, you've led continue to lead one of the most interesting lives, I think, of anyone. And not just anyone in the UFO space. We have this microcosm going on, and this sort of little closed echo chamber biome that we live in that is, ufology. But you've led such an interesting, amazing life outside of that, from being a world famous reporter.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, I do. You're part of the most prestigious programs, news programs that have ever existed. But now you've quite successfully, I might add, transitioned, not unlike myself, into this space.
Do you know, I don't see it as a transition at all. All I see myself doing is applying the same skill set that I've used in journalism for the rest of my career on a subject that, frankly, I honestly didn't intend to come to the conclusion that I did come to about the whole UFO subject matter. I've spoken about this before, but I set out 8 years ago with the arrogant confirmational bias assumption that this was all an American black program, that what we were talking about here were craft, definitely. I mean, they can't not be craft. I mean, I think we're at the point now where we know that these are physical objects. They're detectable. The US is admitting that this phenomena, this unidentified anomalous phenomena, but they maintain the fiction that they have no idea what it is. They don't know if it's extraterrestrial. And I guess I started out with very much the journalistic assumption, well, this must be the Yanks. It must be the Americans. And I was shocked because I'd assumed there'd been a lot of reporters that have done the same work that I've done, because the thing that really sits with me is this should have been done 20, 30 years ago by a New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Boston Globe investigative team, applying the same degree of rigor to the UAP subject as we would to any subject, whether it be, I don't know, systemic child abuse in the Catholic Church or the origins of the COVID-19 vaccine. Journalism does this kind of work. So I honestly don't think that it's exceptional that I've directed my gaze to the UFO subject.
It was a natural progression.
It was a natural progression.
And an underserved market, really.
Yeah, I'm just deleting my phone here, sorry.
Yeah, I'll shut mine off as well. Probably a good idea with what we're going to be talking about. Let me shut this down here. I think, I relate to that a lot as a magician, I think. To me as well, people see this other channel that I had created. I spent a decade sort of nurturing and building to all of a sudden, turn my gaze to this stuff. But for me, it very much aligns with the mysteries that I was uncovering before, which were just, sleight of hand mysteries and misdirection.
But it's funny, you probably a bit like me thought when you came into this subject matter you were going to discover the feint of hand, the sleight of hand that was responsible for concealing, obviously, the American aerospace program that's behind all of this.
Yeah.
And that was my implicit assumption. I thought there must be, and there is.
There is.
There is a part of the legacy program that's working with, I believe, crafts that are far beyond known human kin.
Now, when you say that, is that a gradual sort of rising conviction through the conversations that you've had with people, or was there a turning point for you that just went, holy cow? Now there's all sorts of incidents, and I'm sure that have happened in the past that are incredibly credible. The one which I think was really interesting was the one that happened in New Zealand, which was in 1978, the Kailua, I think, the Kaikoura incident. Yeah, pardon me. That was amazing because we have footage of this, we have pilots, we have military, we have all this corroborating evidence of like this thing happening. Was there an event like the Kaikoura event that kind of tipped you to, oh no, there 100% is something?
Yeah, there was. And it's funny because I can remember it really clearly. I remember my dad, who was a doctor in a small country town in New Zealand, telling me on a particular night that he had seen a UFO. And he told the local cop, the local policeman in the little town that we lived in, that he'd seen a UFO. And the policeman had talked to him about how he'd also seen it and that he'd reported it. And I logged that in my brain in that period of 1978 because the Kaikoura incident came up very soon afterwards in December. It was probably a week, or I've forgotten the distance, but it was a very short period of time. And hilariously, when I started researching the December 1978 Kaikoura incident, I couldn't believe it, because there in the files was the logged report from the local policeman from the town that my dad was in, confirming that he'd seen a craft.
Wow. So up until then, it was just a story your father had told you.
Yeah. And Dad was a total skeptic. You know, he didn't believe any of this bullshit. You know, he, like everybody, including myself, defaulted to the idea that this is nonsense. You know, but we're not really talking about aliens. Right. But the amazing thing was to actually see there in the New Zealand archives a report from a local policeman that confirmed what my dad had told me back then. And it was interesting because this was a period of time when, shortly before the Kaikoura incident, there'd been an incident involving a young fella called Frederick Valentich in Australia.
He disappeared.
He disappeared in a light plane over Bass Strait, which is a strait of water between Tasmania, an island off the southern part of Australia, and sort of basically he flew out of Moorabbin in Melbourne Airport. And it's a very celebrated case. You would probably have heard about it. The last thing he said was, "It's not an aeroplane." And then you hear this kind of...
Oh, it's a haunting audio.
It's a haunting audio. And the official explanation to this day is he crashed into the water. Maybe he was flying upside down, and there's a whole lot of reasons why that's not plausible for that.
Yeah, that's the I doctor just like I said, there are evil ETs, there are good ones. So sometimes I make a joke that these are juvenile delinquent ETs, you know, that they're like the punk kids that we've had to go out and do things they're not supposed to, except for they go to their galaxy and they start mischief and stuff like that, doing things they're not supposed to, and their parents don't know about, because if they did, they get a spanking when they get home. But anyways,
particular type of Cessna.
There were also eyewitnesses to something in the sky. There was even a witness that said there was a craft being sort of commandeered by a flying saucer that he saw.
I'm not so sure about that. That's one from a farmer, and it's an apocryphal story because it's hearsay.
Yeah, it is hearsay.
But what is a good story is there's a photograph. There's a photograph of a very distant object shortly before, shortly
at sunset, right?
At sunset.
I see. This is where I might disagree with that. I see a fly. I see a fly buzzing in front of the camera, and you kind of see its wings. But this is what we're left with. We're left with these details. But more importantly, we have this audio of Frederick Valentich.
But you see, the interesting thing about that is probably before I got into this subject matter, I would have gone, okay, everybody was hyped up because of the Valentich story.
Oh my God. If there's a UFO that is a giant fly, that's scary shit. That'd be scary shit. Right there, holy fuck. It'd be like having a pterodactyl dinosaur. You know, it's again having pterodactyls back living again with us, so we don't have to worry about dodging them, evading them, be a total PvP server type event type of thing. We'd have to have guns and sounds like a game. Actually,
I was hyped up because of what my dad told me he saw. So when the Kaikoura story came along, everybody in New Zealand and Australia were hyped up about UFOs. And we all went crazy for something that was just normal, natural phenomena. And I can remember at the time the reports in the newspapers very quickly asserted that what this were squid boat lights, that in those days when you went squidding, the big fishing boats that were using the squid lights would beam these lights out on the water to attract the squid, and somehow those lights had refracted on clouds, and it gave a vaguely plausible explanation. What was fascinating was to read the declassified New Zealand archives files that showed that was complete nonsense. And the pilot, there was a guy...
They were caught on radar.
They were caught on radar. There was a guy called John Cordy at Wellington Airport, which was across Cook Strait at the bottom of the North Island, and John was still alive when I was writing my book. And I contacted John in Wellington. He was a lovely old duffer, and he had an absolute razor-sharp memory of what had happened that night.
Blenheim were reporting that people had seen strange lights off Blenheim. We had someone else ring us up and ask us if there was an aircraft flying over here because they could hear this funny whistling noise. And then we were seeing these things on the radar.
And he described how he and another controller, the other controller was the principal controller, but he was looking over his shoulder. They were looking at radar returns and objects moving around the Argosy cargo aircraft, a big lumbering Argosy cargo aircraft carrying newspapers up the east coast of the South Island from Christchurch to a place called Blenheim in the upper part of the South Island. And as Dennis Grant, Quentin Fogarty, and Davy Crockett, the implausible name Davy Crockett, were filming with a film camera from the cockpit window of the Argosy aircraft, objects coming up to the window of the aircraft.
Wow.
That movement is being corroborated in real time by the air traffic controllers in Wellington right across the water, probably 50, 60 miles away across Cook Strait. And the interesting thing was Dennis Grant, who ended up becoming a highly reputable political commentator and one of the top political correspondents in Australia. Dennis is still alive, and he's got his notes of what he recorded inside the aircraft.
Wow.
And those notes are corroborating what was being said back to the air traffic controllers at this time. Exactly, the object is in this position, 1 o'clock in front of the aircraft. That's exactly what John Cordy was saying he was seeing back in Wellington. It got even more interesting for me because, like everybody, when I was a little boy, in 1978 I was 16 years old, so I was a teenage kid. I just accepted the government explanation. Back then, the Prime Minister of Australia was a guy called Sir Robert Muldoon, and he was a cantankerous old bastard who was known for not brooking nonsense. And his instinct, and you could see this in the archives, was to shut this down as quickly as possible.
Right.
One of my first gigs in journalism was with the New Zealand Herald newspaper in Auckland, which is a sort of flagship newspaper in New Zealand. It's the main sort of national newspaper. And I was the young cub reporter, and one of the gigs that happened in Christmas time was Sir Robert Muldoon, by that time, was retired and living in his beach house at Christmas time. And for some weird reason, it was a tradition on the newspaper to go and interview Sir Robert Muldoon in his beach house. And he'd talk about whatever. And I remember I asked him, because I was fascinated about Kaikoura, I asked him about the Kaikoura incident. And this is only probably, 6 years later. He chuckled and referred to how the Americans wanted that shut down as quickly as possible.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is the thing people don't realize, that the U.S. has power over most of the world countries when it comes to UFO stuff. We told the UK how to do it. We told members of what's now the European Union how to do it with Belgium. We did it with even Iran. We squashed UFO crash there and UFOs. This is also 76, 77, 78 stuff. There's something that happened in like 1980 as well. This was when, if you know history, that was when it was run by the Islamic regime. And we took, their UFO off of them, stuff like that. I believe it was 1980. And there's other stuff that happened in 76, 77, around there. There's stuff happening there. We squashed stories there. We've done it with Brazil, done Argentina, Canada, all these countries. America alone is the problem when it comes to UFO secrecy, and people have no idea the power that the dark side of the American government has on it, far more than what Russia or China has. They don't have any of the power that America's had keeping UFOs secret, and having people killed, around the globe and stuff like that. So
the Americans wanted it shut down.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me
And
at all. But wow.
What's really interesting is John Cordy, who's now sadly passed away. He passed away about 2 or 3 years ago. John Cordy told me how it was obvious to him in the air traffic control tower in Wellington Tower, they were very unpopular for corroborating what Quentin Fogarty, the filmmaker, recorded.
You're being professionally reprimanded? Or?
Yeah. Basically, they suffered for speaking out publicly. And Quentin, who became a good friend of mine, Quentin Fogarty, was an Australian journalist, and he made a film called Let's Hope They're Friendly. He wrote a book called Let's Hope They're Friendly, because that's what he wrote. At the time when he was up in the plane, he thought, geez, let's hope they're friendly. And it was interesting for me because I had, in teenage years, been acculturated. I'd quite naturally accepted the explanation that these were squid boat lights.
Yeah, or Venus. Or
well, Venus didn't work at all.
No, because it wasn't up during that time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because even the New Zealand Air Force investigators accepted that neither explanation washed.
Yeah.
But that's what was put to the New Zealand public, and it was incredible how quickly it shut the whole thing down.
And when you see the footage, what's remarkable about this is that there are so many cases of these glowing discs that sort of emanate this orange roiling light around the craft. And when you look at this, although it seems a little out of focus, you're filming with this giant camera in an airplane trying to get this light, you see like a band of darker, or it looks like an unfocused disc.
Yep.
It's clearly not just round. There's like a band around the middle, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, I spoke to Bruce Maccabee about that. I mean, one of, I think, the most respected analysts of UFOs in the last 50 years is Bruce Maccabee, an American. I think he was a physicist. But he had a vague association with a quasi-defense agency, but he did a lot of UFO work on the side. And he had taken the film, a copy of the film, and analysed it for Quentin and the TV network back in Australia that was doing the story. And it was quite sensational because what Bruce found was that the movements of these objects were anomalous. And because you had this multiple corroboration, you had the pilot was called Bill Startup, Captain Bill Startup, which was a great name for a pilot. Yeah. And he was a lovely man, really lovely guy. I got to meet him once, and he lived in Blenheim, nuts and bolts guy, absolutely no doubt in his mind about what he'd seen. And he was angry about the misrepresentations of this being him somehow making a mistake as a pilot.
Right.
To him that was a derogatory inference about his profession.
Yeah, it was a slight against his credibility. And
because what was commonly not reported was that there'd been other pilots on a previous flight the previous nights.
That's right.
That had seen these objects. So whatever they were, they'd been hovering in that area and doing these displays for quite some time. But the definitive evidence was when you had the hard evidence from the radar tower in Wellington. And the interesting thing was, it made no sense to me. I was shocked. For me, it was kind of an ontological shock to realise, I mean, I know governments lie, politicians lie all the time, but to hear from a former Prime Minister of New Zealand that this was done largely at the behest of the Americans.
Yeah.
Why?
So bold.
And then there was the Westall case in '66, which we're coming up to the anniversary of in April.
Wow, that's
April
right.
6th.
Yeah.
And when I was writing my book in plain sight, I heard about this case in Melbourne. And there's a great Victorian UFO investigation group, mainly led by a guy called James Rigney, who, by the way, was instrumental in securing the release of the Wilson Davis document. That's another story. But James, I approached James out of the blue, and I basically said, look, can I come down to Melbourne and talk to you? I'm really interested in the Wilson Davis document, but I'm also really interested in the Westall case. And he also told me about the Kelly Cahill case.
Oh, Kelly Cahill's case.
Another famous case.
Super fascinating.
Before a first date, it's basically a classified briefing. You see, you're running a scenario in your head, reviewing prior statements and calculating risk exposure. Haircut, secured. Car, detailed. Timeline of your last 3 texts, analyzed. But there is one non-negotiable before any high-stakes encounter. Deodorant. You see, I've been using Mando. What I genuinely like about it is that it's a whole-body deodorant, not just pits.
I never showered that way.
We're talking thigh folds, feet.
Aliens away. At least I hope.
Anywhere that might compromise the mission. I use the solid stick every morning. It's powered by mandelic acid, which stops odor before it starts. It was created by a doctor who saw how often normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And it's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. That's not masking it, that's handling it. I've built it into my routine before shoots, live shows, and travel. Anything where confidence matters. And when you're walking into a first date like it's a diplomatic summit, that matters. So if you want to try America's #1 whole-body deodorant formula, go to shopmando.com and use code AREA52 for 20% off site-wide, plus free shipping. Again, head to shopmando.com. Use code AREA52 for 20% off and free shipping. And support the show. Remember, don't mask it, Mando it.
And so I spent a weekend with James going around looking at the Kelly Cahill site, and then the great thing was I got to meet a whole lot of the people who'd been present at Westall as little kids.
The students, wow.
And I remember thinking, these people aren't lying. You know, this is real. And then the absolute clincher, the absolute gotcha moment for me was when Andrew Greenwood, who'd spoken previously to James Fox anonymously, he met me. He was the teacher, the science teacher, who had been on the quadrangle with these kids when, on the 6th of April, 1966, they looked up over the field and there were either 2 or 3 or maybe 1, nobody's quite sure, there are differing witness accounts, 1 to 3 objects hovering over the school playground. And there are 100 plus kids looking up at this objects, and they are metallic
Discs.
elliptical discs.
Yeah.
And as these kids watch, one of the objects lands in an area of forest, which is a place where the kids knew really, really well. And the hilarious thing is, the kids knew that land better than the military, who came in their droves and secured the site shortly thereafter. But there's a whole lot of stories, some of which I think, frankly, don't make sense.
Sure.
There's some elaborate stories where some people claim that they touched the craft, and I'm not 100% sure about that, but I am in no doubt that a group of kids got close enough to see the craft from probably 5 meters away.
Yeah, this is not unlike, the Zimbabwe incident as well at the Ariel school.
It's very like
similar.
The Rua story.
That
Yeah.
is something
But
to watch.
what I love about the Westall story, and it's coming up for the 60th anniversary, and I'm going to be there for it, hopefully, is the military and the intelligence
Air Force
community come in.
presence. Yep.
Andrew Greenwood, the science teacher, speaks publicly to a local newspaper, a local a local suburban newspaper. And he says, I'm sure about what I saw, and there's the quotes of what he said in the newspaper are still available in the archives today. He gets, and this is why he agreed to talk to me, he gets a knock on his door late at night. He opens the door, and there's one man in Air Force uniform, Australian Air Force uniform, and there's another man in civilian clothes. And they basically threaten him. And he was angry about this, really angry. They threatened him that if he didn't shut up talking about what he'd seen, they would put around a story that he was an alcoholic and he would lose his job as a teacher. And that's why he didn't talk about it for most of the last 40, 50 years. And
was he an alcoholic? Did he drink?
No,
Not at all.
No. Well, he probably had a glass of wine at Christmas time.
Sure, yeah.
No, he wasn't an alcoholic. He was a really decent, honourable man.
Wow.
Sadly, he's passed away as well. But he, in I think the last 2 years of his life, he agreed to give a television interview to me, and he talked very candidly about what he saw, and he was adamant about what he saw being not a craft. He was very precise and very scientific. He said whatever it was some kind of metallic coloured elliptical shaped object. He couldn't say that it was solid because he didn't touch it. He was very scientific and very careful, but very, very precise. And it was very interesting because I'd say there's probably, a dozen corroborative witnesses that I've spoken to, and there's an Australian researcher who's done some phenomenal work, and he's spoken to over 160 witnesses. There are people who saw Americans on the scene, and this is really interesting. There was a base called the Royal Australian Air Force Base Sale, about 3 or 4 hours drive north of Melbourne, and the Americans had been operating a secret U-2 spy plane flying over the southern oceans to monitor for radioactive plumes, radioactive residue from either Russian nuclear testing or somebody else. It might have been suspicions about South Africa. I doubt if it was at that time, but
I've heard some stuff.
Whoever it was,
satellite stuff, or like
whoever it was, the kids that I spoke to, now adults in their 60s, they described American Jeeps turning up. People wearing American uniforms turning up at the school. They described being threatened by men dressed in civilian clothes. The whole school assembly was told to shut up about it. There was a real attempt to clamp it down. But what I loved about these kids, they're still really cheeky today. They love talking about it now that they're in their 60s. And I'm so looking forward to seeing them in April. Because for them, this was a life-defining moment. Yeah. All their lives, they have lived with this reality of what they've seen. And, you've had groups like the Australian Skeptics gave me a Benk Fork Award because I was the journalist that said that, I gave this credibility. And for no good reason at all, absolutely no scientific basis to their assertions. They just sweepingly dismissed all of the evidence given by these multiple witnesses, first-hand witnesses, and just said it's just a bunch of school kids getting excited and confabulating, and they were excited about the Frederick Valentich case, and it's all nonsense.
Yeah, still to this day as adults.
And if you hear the passion from those people, there is no doubt in my mind that they are telling the truth and that they saw something anomalous. And the kicker for me was Andrew Greenwood having the courage before he passed to speak publicly about the fact that he had been threatened by somebody from what he believed was either military or an intelligence agency.
American.
Why? Well, we don't know.
I see.
We don't know.
Right.
Why shut down a legitimate public inquiry into what was obviously anomalous phenomena? Why?
So, well...
Because that's their business. They want to keep it a secret. They don't want people to know about it. It's American bread and butter, and there's a lot of stuff for keeping secret that they just don't want people talking about it. And so the government is treated like a bunch of thugs and stuff like that and doing that.
That brings me to an interesting question because, we're often faced with like this deliberate secrecy, this cover up, and we hear about it so much through the Men in Black and through all these other.
The thing is that today what they call it as terroristic threats and stuff. In the old days, they didn't have such thing as terroristic threats so much, but much different subject. But.
The legacy program, but at what point in today's sort of UFO sphere, do you think we go from deliberate secrecy to just sort of like institutional confusion? Because we are dealing with that as well. Like there is this, like with Congress and everything, I can't help but think that they don't know very much. Like it's the gestalt that I get. It's the feeling that I get when I listen to the news. It doesn't seem like very many people are in on anything, but then you hear about these Americans turning up at these sites. Like, what's the connection there?
Okay, I think there's been a change since 2017. I'm really lucky because I started talking to some quite senior people in Congress on background, like not on the record, before a lot of this became public and before the decision was made, for example, by the Pentagon to acknowledge in 2021 in that original report from their, I've forgotten what it was called at the time. It wasn't the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It was some other ones of their stupid names.
OSAP. No, not
OSAP.
OSAP, yeah.
But they published a report in 2021 acknowledging that UAPs are real. Whatever they are, they're real. They're not something that can be discounted. That, for me, was a huge turning point in, I think, public awareness of the issue. But before that time, I would say that a lot of the people in Congress were genuinely oblivious, including, I can say this, members of the Gang of Eight.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled rank with a few people I knew from other stories I'd done to get access to 2 members of the Gang of Eight in that period. And the Gang of Eight, as you would know, is a group of senior politicians, the Senate Majority Leader, the House Majority Leader, senior people, both sides of politics, who are entrusted to review in the oversight committees the most sensitive secrets of all. And it's largely because there is still, I think, a contumelious disregard in the intelligence community and the military for the idea of oversight by Congress, because they believe very strongly that Congress can't be trusted with secrets.
That's right.
And they're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think this lies at the heart of the cover-up of the legacy.
Is a lot of that
retrieval.
unacknowledged special access programs. Like those things don't go through these sort of committee hearings.
So this hilarious categorization that they have for compartmentalized secrets, you know, we all know what a special access program is. It's essentially a secret, a compartmentalized secret. And then there are unacknowledged special access programs, and then the biggest one of all are the WUSAPs, the waived unacknowledged special access programs. The WUSAPs and the ASAPs, if you like, they are generally put before the Gang of Eight, and it means that there's still congressional oversight. The idea is that there's still congressional oversight by a group of trusted people who can be trusted with those secrets, and that frankly doesn't really work in practice, and there's still, I think, holding back of information.
There has to be
by the CIA, by the defense community, because they don't trust.
They'll give them breadcrumbs and throw them a bone, but
and I mean, there's a whole series of histories. One of my favorite series of books is histories of the CIA and how the CIA has basically hidden stuff from Congress over the years. And I put myself into their position as an intelligence agency trying to protect the security of operations they're trying to run. I'm not making excuses for them, because the law says very clearly they are obliged to reveal this information to Congress, and accountability is enshrined in the Constitution, the US Constitution. So there is a legal requirement that this be done, but it hasn't been being done. But what I'm coming to answer your question, what I found was there were people who were denying knowledge to me of any kind of program categorically in about 2018, 2019, 2020. And then when I went back to them after that moment, when in 2021 the Pentagon had made the admission that there are UFOs, they were evasive. And I think what's happened in the interim is certain members of the Gang of Eight, not all of them, have been read in. They've been told. And I think this is what's going to be used as an attempt to rescue.
Well, this is they tell them, and then they say you can't talk about this top secret. We got stuff going on with these programs about national security, and they could threaten them with their lives with it as well. And it's like, be careful what you wish for. You want to know stuff? Well, knowing things could get you killed. yeah, they'd kill a congressperson. I mean, and some people would care. Careful what you wish for, stuff. So.
The tattered reputations of the Pentagon and the intelligence community, when the truth does finally come out that they've been lying to the public and indeed to presidents for many decades, I think they're going to use the excuse that certain members of Congress over the years have been read in. For example, I'm pretty sure Senator John McCain was very much aware of the legacy retrieval reverse engineering.
On what grounds?
I can't say.
Okay.
But I'm very sure that John McCain was.
Is that secondhand or firsthand information? Do you get that from someone who knew him, or do you get that from...
I get that from somebody who knew him.
Yeah. Very well?
Very well.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't doubt for a moment that there have been key people in the Congress who've been entrusted with this information. And I think that's how, when it comes out in the wash...
By whom, though? Like that, because by another government entity that's unacknowledged, or by some faction that's completely removed?
There really is, as batty as this sounds, there really is a control group.
A cabal of
I had a situation when I was talking to David Grush, and David Grush...
Sorry, the control group that you just mentioned, you think that this is outside of any government jurisdiction? You think that
these are people working in government in a lot of the cases, but a lot of them, I'd say the majority of them, are people working in private aerospace.
Right, and they together form this other entity that doesn't abide by any rules.
I mean, they're in all of the well-known aerospace companies, Battelle, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman,
Raytheon,
Boeing, Raytheon. These are people who have been regarded as a safe pair of hands. Often they've come through the route of the CIA, science, technology. They're safe people to be entrusted with the secret, and they've been read in, briefed into the program, and periodically they will bring into the loop key politicians who are trusted. I'm thinking of one in particular. I'm not going to name him. I had an incident when I was doing some research a year ago, and I know what a certain senator was told by a source of mine, and I know he has lied to the public about what he's been told. And it's quite galling to me, because he's clearly made a decision as a member of the Gang of Eight to completely mislead.
Democrat or Republican?
I can't tell you.
I have a feeling it's Democrat.
Oh, really? Okay, that's an interesting guess. But what I'm fascinated by...
The reason why it says Democrat, I hate both sides of the aisle, is that the Democrats are easier to corrupt. And Republicans are not as easy. That's because a lot of Republicans are religious to a fault. Being around mob, knowing people from the mob and stuff like that. That it's easier to corrupt a Democrat all the time than a Republican. That's just the way that is, because they have different mindsets and different values, and they think differently than Republicans. Again, I hate both sides. I don't like politicians. I think most should be executed for crimes that they commit, and stuff like that. So, anyways.
There's been a change. And I think what's happened is the legacy program were treating Congress with utter contempt and not briefing anyone. And that, for a large part of the last 50, 60 years, has been the status quo.
So they've no new friends. Is the idea.
But what they've done in the last year or two, particularly, is they've started briefing in select senators in particular. I don't think they trust the House at all.
It's another cabal, and it's something that I knew would happen. I knew this would happen. I said it was going to happen. That means that these stupid politicians are just as bad as these people that are in charge of keeping it a secret. Including some people that used to be in the military. They go into contracting, companies, stuff like that. They get inbred. They make money off it as well, and everything. They make over $1 million, and pretty stalking to these companies as well with science technology stuff. It's just worse corruption and everything. It's almost like keeping it in the mafia type of thing, keeping it in the family mob thing, mob mentality, stuff like that.
Doing that out of their hands are forced because of their dying out, or like what's the reason behind that, you think?
Oh no, I think they're scrambling to protect themselves in the event that this does become disclosed.
Right, and they get sued, or
I'm in little doubt that there is some kind of an executive order that regulates a quasi-legality to the continued secrecy of the retrieval reverse engineering program.
To national security.
People I've spoken to who are constitutional lawyers, really top constitutional lawyers, tell me that they cannot see any basis under which, for example, successive presidents could be bound into not being able to be briefed, even when they asked for it, like Clinton did, by, say, an executive order that was passed by Eisenhower or Truman. And it's not an apocryphal story, I'm told, that there is a secret executive order that was signed probably during the Truman administration. There was one also done during the Eisenhower administration. And that this enshrined the legacy retrieval reverse engineering program and kept it secret from Congress. I think this is what they're
out of plausible deniability for the president as well. And
I was trained as a lawyer, and I'm fascinated by what I think is one of the most beautiful documents on the planet, the US Constitution. I think it's an incredible statement of ideals. And the interesting thing to me is how those ideals have been corrupted, sadly, with this story, with the UAP program. Because of this inherent distrust of Congress, because they leak. You know, both sides leak all the time. As a journalist, I've in Australia, I've seen it for myself, where a politician, a defence minister, for example, ordered a leaks inquiry because of a story I'd done. And I knew he was the guy that had leaked me the information. That's what happens. And governments lie all the time about who's leaking information. They do it for a strategic advantage. And there is a problem with politicians that they do leak because they're covering their butts or they're trying to score a point against their rivals. The problem with that is that then you've got a situation that has developed with the legacy program where noble cause corruption happened, because this is process corruption. People inside the legacy program decided not to honour the terms of the Constitution and to ignore the obligation to report to Congress. And I believe trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars have been expended on this program without the knowledge of the consent of the American taxpayer, and certainly with no oversight, with very little oversight from Congress.
Well, I mean, Pentagon has failed every audit in forever. And there's trillions of dollars missing prior to the 9/11 incident.
Well, we have to be careful about that. I mean, there's been misrepresentation of some of the things that Catherine Austin-Fitts, for example, has said. There are audit holes that mean they can't account for money.
Sure.
But they know that it's gone into a certain program. But as David Grush has explained in some of his interviews, including with me, they're using those programs to conceal this legacy program.
Yeah.
So that's how they do it.
Yeah, they'll charge you, $5,000 for a bag of bolts.
Yeah.
To these contractors and stuff, and that's kind of how they get away. It's criminal. Okay, you've, from my understanding, have gotten to speak to a lot of people that potentially, and I don't know that I can, verify any of this, but that potentially are, directly linked to some type of program. And these are your confidential sources. These are, so I won't ask you about who these sources are, or, this is...
I couldn't tell you anyway.
And that's part of your journalistic integrity, and I think that that's really important to, adhere to as someone asking you these questions. I want you to have those connections, so I don't want to jeopardize any of that. But
you have to ask
what I will ask you is, out of all of these claims, what's a claim that came to you that you couldn't report on, not because of national security or secrecy or giving up your source, but because it was like an incredible claim that you just couldn't verify? Is there anything that sticks out to you that just goes, well, it's an outlier, or it's, some type of anomalous piece of information?
The one thing I can't put my finger on and say categorically, hand on heart, I believe is real, but I suspect there's something to it, is the idea of a secret space program.
Yeah, we do.
And there was a conversation I had with someone who I trust, who got very emotional and described a friend of his dying on the moon.
Wow.
And
what do you make of that?
I didn't know what to make of it.
Because you have someone crying, telling you this. Like,
Yeah.
clearly they're affected by the information they're giving you.
Yeah. Basically, I just don't know. I mean, I think a lot of the Corey Good claims, Darcy Weir's done a great show about this recently. A lot of the wacky claims about the secret space program, I suspect, are almost deliberate intelligence community disinformation to discredit the whole idea of a secret space program. What I'm talking about is what, oddly enough, Tom DeLonge has come closest to hinting at, which is that are we operating non-human craft that we've somehow been able to jury-rig using human psionic operators?
And using those craft to go to the moon and beyond, perhaps?
To the moon and beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even been told, one of the things I haven't been able to confirm or corroborate to my satisfaction, and normally when I corroborate something, I want to hear it from 2 or 3 independent witnesses who don't know each other, and I'm hearing the same consistent story. That's what I've heard from people about the legacy program. I've spoken to over a dozen people, probably 15 plus people, who operate, either have operated or are operating inside what we would call the legacy retrieval of non-human craft and reverse engineering program.
Wow.
I'm in no doubt whatsoever that that exists. You're asking me, what have I been told about but I haven't been able to confirm to my satisfaction?
That's right.
Is the qualitative nature of what's called the secret space program.
Now you're referring to what, famously Gary McKinnon had also spoken about when he'd gotten into the back end of NASA and saw these ship names that weren't actual ship names and people he couldn't verify, and then seeing, this craft on a photo.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that one of them is called the Hillenkotter.
Right.
Because Roscoe Hillenkotter, of course, the founding director of the CIA.
And part of Majestic 12.
Part of Majestic 12 was also one of the biggest UFO disclosure activists of his time in the 1950s. So I love the idea that the Roscoe Hillenkotter is a secret spacecraft.
Tip of the hat.
If that's really the case. I don't know what to make of Gary McKinnon other than the fact that I find him highly credible. He doesn't strike me as somebody who's lying.
It's one of the few other corroborating sort of anecdotal pieces of evidence that we have confirming this secret space program, other than perhaps Haim Eshed, right, who also mentions this as well. And so
there are other data points, though, too. I mean, for example, there was in California, I think at Edwards Air Force Base, a separate astronaut program, and they were in training. They were being taught. They were non-NASA astronauts. They were US Air Force astronauts. And a lot of people don't know this. There was a separate space program that's officially acknowledged that was training astronauts for the US Air Force. Now, officially, that was shut down.
Yeah, it's more military.
I don't think it was.
No,
you think it was just...
I think it went black.
You went black?
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is I suspect that they're operating out of deep underground military bases in different parts of the USA, continental USA.
Nothing to do with...
Yeah, they are. You have Arizona, you have national parks, like I said, we have stuff underground, we have stuff in the hills, mountains, national parks, underwater, all kinds of stuff that we have here right in front of people's faces that, we're doing this. We do have assets in space. We do. We have, stuff, above Earth, Moon, Mars, other planets, stuff like that. It's a lot bigger than people think. A lot bigger.
Space Force.
I suspect they are linked to Space Force.
Yeah.
But not directly, as in, like, these are people from Space Force going out there. These are... Space Force is probably... Like, what do you make of it? I make of it more of like an intelligence gathering.
Well, the thing is, they're created so they could be linked. So the other branches, they're doing secret stuff, space stuff like that. Primarily, like Navy, Air Force. All right, they want to have it under one branch. And that's what I believe why Trump made the Space Force, and so they could go under one banner, the Space Force being one branch, where Navy, Air Force would have their own departments, compartments, whatever, of doing UFO space programs and stuff like that. So I believe that's the biggest reason why he did the Space Force as well.
Bring sort of unit.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because Australia has actually started recruiting for its own equivalent of Space Force.
Really?
And ostensibly that's for purely and simply data gathering, monitoring space junk and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, or keeping an eye on, satellites and NRO activity.
I don't know. I don't know whether the program that I'm describing is part of Space Force or not. I would be very surprised if the senior command of Space Force was oblivious to its existence.
Has anyone that
I could tell you this, that I do know, is that some of these programs do not want to be a part of Space Force. They're fighting each other. Especially, like I said, with how these contractors are willing to kill each other off. People actually being murdered for the data, the tech and the magic that the other has, that they want to kill each other for us. And some of them do not want to be under Space Force. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be under a command. They like to do stuff their own way. They like being told what to do. After all, they've been doing this for 70 years, or 80 years or whatever. And you think that they're just want to go into the Space Force and have them look at what they're doing, they know what they know, and having decades of stuff just automatically just throw it onto? No. Some do not want. There's going to be out that don't want that.
Spoken to from the program ever alluded to something like this?
Yes.
They have?
Yeah.
Were any of them sort of read in on these programs?
Yeah.
The secret space stuff?
Yeah. Or they claimed to be.
They claim to be. More than one?
No, just one. That's
just
why.
Just one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the conversation that I had with somebody who described a friend dying on the moon.
How did they die?
I don't know. Wouldn't tell me.
He wouldn't tell you, but he said he was dying on the moon.
Died.
Oh, he died on the moon. What other information did they give you? Is that it? Is it? I had a friend that died on the moon and they started crying.
So frustrating. Do you get the feeling?
So
I sometimes feel in this whole story, I'm walking through a room blindfold and I'm just grabbing stuff as I'm going through.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And it's so frustrating. And the thing that really gets
you just want to
me,
shake someone sometimes, be like,
well, the thing that really frustrates me is if people knew how hard it is to get even that.
Yeah.
That conversation took 3.5, 4 years.
To nurture,
to get that person to the point where they would sit down with me. They would not communicate on any known comms system.
Did you seek them out, or did they find you?
Well, let's go to the basis of how I found people originally.
Sure.
The way I approached this as a journalist was to basically ask myself if there was a program, what sort of people would be in it and what sort of scientists would be involved in it. And so I targeted particularly scientists and wrote letters to them, good old-fashioned handwritten letters, and posted them with a stamp on an envelope, knowing that that's non-digital, so reasonably less trackable. And that was phenomenally effective. In a couple of cases, I literally went and dropped a letter in a letterbox without a stamp to make a point that I'd been there, and told them that I was in town for a day or so, and if they wanted to, they could come and talk to me. And in a couple of cases, they did.
Wow.
And it was because what I was doing was trying to indicate I was following tradecraft. I was respecting the fact that people have no idea how easy it is to monitor using your phone.
Yeah.
That's what you've got to do to convince these people that you're serious. And it's funny because one of the things that I found was most effective was sometimes some people were so enthusiastic about speaking to me, they'd ring me on open comms. Like they'd contact me through something as wide open as Signal or WhatsApp, because it's not hard to obtain my Signal. And even though those things are supposedly encrypted, I would never use those to communicate with the most sensitive sources that I try and communicate with.
Of course.
I use dead letter drops on the dark web.
Or in person.
Yeah. Or postal mail, just saying, look, I'm going to be here on this date. If you want to get hold of me, you can contact me in this way. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to operate like a spy.
You know what's actually more unsettling than most of the files we read on this channel? The fact that there are companies whose entire business is collecting your personal information and selling it. Not secret agencies, but data brokers.
That reminds me with the Nancy Guthrie case. That I was looking into stuff that they were building. It's like something told me to investigate what they were building, because they're building some big stuff there. I found out that they're building a huge data center there to look at everything that we're doing. I think these things need to be burned down a lot of ways. I don't like these. These are there to just they're to spy on us, and to not criminals or anything, but to spy on the people. And they're building this data center there in Tucson. It's a personal data center, and they have it under a different name, like Project Blue, something Blue.
Are those interactions with these people, are these people shaky? Are they paranoid? Are they looking over their shoulder constantly? How do they feel about this? And do they know you prior? Are they...
Well, it's easier now.
Right.
I mean, it's happening a lot more for
being a
me
public
now
figure,
because I've got the News Nation role that I do.
Right.
And I think that really helps because people know me, they feel familiar with me, and I hope... I mean, I really do. I take this really seriously. There was a kind of a realization moment for me where I met somebody in a Georgetown bar in Washington who was, normally I'd see them in uniform, and the uniform they were wearing was extremely senior, and I knew them from another story that I'd done, and they were incredibly generous to me. And I remember they leaned across the table to me and said, "It's real, Roscoe." And I remember I went back to my hotel that night, and I thought, holy shit. Because I was guilty of starting out with a confirmational bias. I was doing what a journalist should not do.
Right.
I'd started out thinking, being a smug little smartass, I was going to disprove this UFO nonsense. I really did think it was nonsense. And the interesting thing was, the more I got into it, good people are telling me this is real. And this is the thing I wanted to emphasize. These people are patriots. What they're angry about isn't the program. They're proud of the program. They're really excited about the technologies that are being worked on and discovered. They want you, the world, the public, to know about it.
Yeah.
And they don't think there's any really good reason that it not be revealed to the public. There's two issues.
It's not national security.
And I don't agree with the analysis that most of the detractors suggest, which is that if you reveal the first, you have to reveal the second. The first issue is there a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet?
Yes.
And the answer to that, indubitably, is yes. The second issue is, does the public have a right to know the details of the technology and the developments that we've advanced as a result of the recovery of that technology? Now,
I have to say, though, I know some ETs do not want to be bothered by humans. They just like to be around and do reproductive stuff on humans, instead of creating new species, and they don't want to be bothered. is some that don't do that. They just don't want to be bothered. They just want to come and go, see things, and that's it. They don't want humans bothering them, trying to interact with them. They've been coming here for like hundreds of thousands of years or whatever, and it's like, you know, that's it. Some don't want to be bothered with that. And others want to communicate with us. And some of them want to teach us that there is a better way in life, a positive way, and that we should learn telepathy, psionic abilities, and stuff like that. So, I mean, some of that, and I think, you know, the government, these contractors could say, hey, well, they're not going to say that. I know that, but I'm not going to give them any ideas.
The argument that I get back from people, and I've spoken to people in the Pentagon and in the intelligence community, and they tell me they think if you reveal the first, you're going to have to reveal the latter. And I think that's the biggest impediment right now to any kind of government admission. They think that if they tell the public, yes, we've recovered alien spacecraft, yes, there really is non-human intelligence engaging with this planet, and we've been lying to you for the last 80 years, they think that that will lead to a catastrophic rollout of what we've got.
Sure. Yeah, and also having to explain perhaps so many other things.
No, it's the criminal activity. It's not that, it's that their criminals are running these programs. And they don't want to face responsibility, go into prison for all the crimes they've committed. That's what they don't want. You want the truth? That's a huge part of it.
Oh, and the murders and
the murders, the cover-ups, but also perhaps the phenomenon itself. Like, I mean, I personally, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm pretty certain that the phenomenon isn't a singular thing that we're dealing with. It is probably multifaceted.
Yep.
It is probably dynamic and changing, and it is we're aware of it. And there's all sorts of levels to this that we're interacting with.
Yep.
I don't think that it's simply explained away by even words like non-human intelligence. Like, that's such a broad term. You know, people are going to ask for specifics, and they're going to be like, what do you mean? Where are they from? And that's where it gets murky for them, because they have to go, oh, they're from here, but they're also from there, and they're from under there, and they're from, and they're from a different time, and there's all these interactions that we're potentially having.
Sure.
Which will open a can of worms. So it's not only, oh, there's aliens, it's what are the aliens?
My issue is, I don't think there's going to be any kind of government admission about disclosure. I don't think Mark Christopher Lee is right. I'm certainly not being told by anybody I'm speaking to that there's going to be any kind of Trump announcement anytime soon. I know Trump knows, and I know, I mean, it's public that I've spoken to his son, and I know that there is interest in the family in disclosure and seeing things coming out, but I don't think there is any intention at the moment by Donald Trump to tell the world what he's been told privately, which is that there is a non-human intelligence and that we have recovered craft and that we are doing a retrieval and reverse engineering program. I don't buy the idea that to reveal the existence of a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet inevitably leads to the forced revelation of weaponry and technology that we've developed. In the same way that when we developed the nuclear bomb, you and I don't know how to make a thermonuclear bomb, and neither should we ever. And if it's true, for example, that we've developed scalar weapons or particle beam weapons as a result of recovered technology, I don't think anyone should know that. God help us if that gets into the hands of a terrorist group or our rivals. I can understand why we'd want to keep that confidential from Russia or China, who are equally in a race to try and develop the same technology after doing their own retrievals. I'm also in no doubt about that at all. So I'm not trying to be an apologist for the national security state, but I think what they've done is they've locked themselves into a position that I think is unreasonable. And they've convinced themselves that if they reveal one, they have to reveal the other. And I don't accept that one follows the other.
I agree with that. And I also think that it is unfortunate that the bearers of this paradigm shifting secret are people with guns.
Yeah.
It's the most tragic thing that exists, because the mere idea that we are being visited or interacting with in some way this other intelligence is a great philosophical question about our humanity, and by default we default to, well, we got to hurry up and make weapons before they make weapons. Hold on a second. We're talking about interacting with these beautiful, potentially, things that could teach us so many things about who we are and where we're from, and we go straight to that. The conversation skipped a beat. Like, we were closer, I think, to collective disclosure in the 50s than we are now. Yep. When people were talking about Space Brothers and putting the nukes away and Venusians coming down. Like, I think that was probably a step in the right direction.
Sure. Right.
Versus what we're doing now is completely just shutting down and militarizing and making everything, a national security issue.
And now you got people in Congress, the Gang of Eight, that are corrupt. So, and before they wanted to know about it, they want to put stuff out. But they've become the enemy. The Gang of Eight is the enemy as well now, with keeping stuff a secret. And they want to control. Everybody wants to know more than the others about ego. Even with me, some is ego, where I want to know, because I'm such an idiot and lost stuff in life. UFOs, ETs, paranormal is the strongest thing that I have over people. That's the only thing that I have over people, is my knowledge of that and stuff. Otherwise, I'm pretty much cursed to be the biggest idiot there is. Only some of the military said that, but so that's the only thing I got to be smart about. So.
I think one of the most galling, shocking moments for me was when people that I was talking to in the program, who are still in the program, admitted to me that we're using high pulse microwave weapons, HPMs, to take them down craft. And what we do is we use psionics to lure them, to bring them, to attract them, to invite them. And for some obscure reason, they keep on coming.
That's something we discussed about as well yesterday, and it's something that I've been pondering on a lot on this channel, as many of the viewers know, is that, like, that seems to me like a white blood cell response, like some type of autoimmune system response, because if they are that intelligent, they're not fish, they're not going to keep falling for the same trap and bait. Is it like an AI? That's what it seems to me. But okay, here's my next question. We've purposely downed these craft, right? Have we purposely murdered other beings?
Oh God, that's a horrible thought, isn't it? Wouldn't it be
And like I said, our people that are doing it should be executed. I'd like to see them attack our military, our contractors. They should be attacked for that. And this comes from somebody that I do communicate with ETs, extraterrestrials sometimes. I do see them. And they're good battles. Like, why aren't you doubting the evil ones? They're doing bad stuff. Why are you doubting the good ones? This stuff. Because I don't have people that I talk to, but I have ETs that I do communicate with. More. And that they see in a lot of ways that they're there, and I don't have people or anything in my life and everything, so it's like for me it's a lot different. I cannot talk with humans about most stuff that I know and am around, because humans can't understand that usually unless they have the same stuff they've been through like I have. So, I gravitate to them and everything. I don't expect people to understand that much, but I'm just putting this out there in case somebody wants to know the truth about stuff. It's just
absolute catastrophe if our first contact with a non-human intelligence involved us murdering the occupants of the vehicle that we were trying to retrieve.
Have we?
Yes.
I suspect we have.
I know the answer.
Yeah, I suspect we have.
That's the worst crime.
I've asked people that have been involved in retrievals.
They should be killed for doing that.
I've asked them what happened to the beings.
That's murder.
And I just get a squeamish look.
That's murder.
Now, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there was a being on the craft that they're talking about. They just don't want to answer the question. But it's the anguished look that they give me.
For me, and you can feel it. Those are my friends. Those ETs that I communicate with, they're more my friends than these stupid human, just about. I can feel them around me. I know they're around me. I know that they're always here. I don't expect humans to understand that unless they've been around this stuff like I have. But those are my people in a way, so I'd be pissed, beyond pissed, and I know I'm the one hurt. Military people that do this or whoever. Because some of those ETs are like my people, they're my friends. And they're bound ones. If you're down a UFO, why are you not taking down these evil ones that are abducting humans for reproductive stuff? You know why? Because we have an alliance with them as well. And there are other ETs that would call us butchers and murderers. And they'd be right.
That concerns me most of all. And I think that's the ethical quandaries behind what we've been doing, on the rationale that what we're doing is giving ourselves a strategic advantage against our potential foreign adversaries. We've rationalized ourselves into a military groupthink that what we're doing is the right thing, when the thing I find most fascinating is even, for example, Jake Barber, who went public with me year before last. Jake talked openly about the love, the overwhelming love that he felt from whatever the intelligence was that was associated with the craft that he was recovering. It was life-changing for him, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn if I say that for Jake, that was a defining life moment. It changed his life. He made a decision, and incredibly he stuck to it, to speak publicly because he thinks the public has a right to know what he knows.
Yeah, that's where it gets...
What I don't like and I don't get is why they believe that there's certain things that should be secret, and how military and stuff should be charged with some of this stuff. I don't have any respect for that. I don't like that part of them in any way. This should be open to everybody. It should be more open to everybody, the public, than it should be open to the government and military. Because I know our government, governments are evil, full of criminals.
Gets
Thugs.
That's where it gets really murky as well. Thinking about that, for me, it breaks my heart hearing that that's a possibility. It really does. It's a very upsetting and probably the worst crime humanity could commit.
Oh, just imagine. I mean, imagine if that's true.
It is.
And the thing that
it is true.
The thing I find most confronting is, at the moment, the official position still of the Pentagon is we have no evidence at all of extraterrestrial engagement with planet Earth.
Yeah.
And they won't say NHI engagement with planet Earth for some reason. I noticed our friend Chris Sharp has put that to Susan Goff at the Pentagon, and she won't allow him to use NHI in substitution. It means what they've done is they've very subtly confected a response that just giving them some wriggle room.
Right.
For when public disclosure does happen. They can say, well, no, we didn't say ET. We didn't say it was...
Yes.
We said it wasn't ET.
Yeah, synthetic sentience is probably the reality of the matter.
I think there's something like that gives them wriggle room.
Yeah.
I mean, the best I've got from people about the accounts of bodies that they've seen are that these are some kind of android, some kind of biological
synthetic
robot.
intelligence. Yeah.
Right. They're constructed objects.
But that seems to be the ones we shoot down.
But also, don't forget, there's a distinction between what we've been shooting down in more recent years and what we recovered right back in the 40s and the 50s.
That's right. And what was visiting us willingly and communicating with us. And there seems to be a vast sort of spectrum of different beings interacting with us all the way from...
I have to correct this because there are people who say this only synthetic artificial intelligence that's coming here. That's not right. That's bullshit. There is real flesh, blood, whatever that's coming here as well. Like I say, why are they not doubting the evil was because we have the lives with trade, reproductive stuff, animal mutilation, things like that, for you alien ET species. So I have to put that in.
From Antonio Villas-Boas, first encounter, the hills, and then going on from there, from Adamski to Dan Fry and all these other human-looking ones. In your discussions, it seems to me what I'm gathering is that a lot of the program people are more reticent in discussing the beings with you. Is that fair to say?
I think they're scared of talking about it because they're morally squeamish about making admissions about it.
I see. But have they ever confirmed to you?
I do think, just to continue the question that you asked me originally,
Sure.
which is what are some of the things that I've heard but I haven't been able to corroborate to my satisfaction where I feel that I can say confidently that I think it's true.
Sure.
The other thing that I do believe is quite possibly the case, but I haven't been able to substantiate it to my satisfaction, I've only heard insufficient data points to make a conclusion, is the allegation that there are beings that have been collaborating with humans.
Right.
Yeah.
So the implication being that there is an ongoing collaboration between humans and non-humans in some kind of unspecified
treaty
agreement. And I keep on pointing people back to my interview with David Grush, where I pinned David down on a line in his DOPSA, in his pre-publication security review approval, where he was approved to talk about agreements. And I saw that line about agreements, and then I thought, what does that mean? And you might notice when I go and sit down with David and take him through it, he just can't go there. And it's quite clear that you're talking about agreements between America and non-human intelligences. Have we made agreements with non-human intelligences?
That's the kind of information I really hope national leadership is able to get to the bottom of.
I need to pin you down on this. Are there agreements between non-human intelligences and the American government?
I think that's a question that I would like to know all the details of as well.
And I believe there are agreements that have been made between non-humans and humans. And I do think the US government was involved, but whether it was done formally by a president or whether it was done by an agency of the United States like the CIA on behalf of the human race, imagine the ethics of that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. Imagine how Russia, Britain, China, the rest of the world will feel if they learn that the Americans concluded a deal with a non-human intelligence 60, 70 years ago.
And potentially with the wrong ones.
And potentially with the wrong ones. You've heard the same story.
Yeah.
Russia and China do the same thing.
I don't know if that's true. But because one of the things that you and I both know is that there's a lot of sprinkling of disinformation You know, there are the Richard Doties who just love gaily spreading little droplets of falsity to try and sow discord inside the community. And the UFO community itself is a sort of a sewer of snide barbs and rasping criticism. It needs to be a more concerted and unanimous group trying to sort of fight and push for information and disclosure, but it's doing its level best to stab each other in the back. And in that context, that's what helps the intelligence community and the Defence Department to try and keep on pushing the line that there is no evidence of extraterrestrial engagement with this planet, which is not the issue.
Yeah, has there been discussions among these people, and I bring it back to the people closest to the programs, because obviously, you know, you and I are both public figures, and I'm not, you know, anywhere near as famous for any of this as you are, but I do receive my fair share of stories and, you know, reports of, oh, I met this type of, you know, alien, it had these type of arms or this type of head, or it looked like us, or it, you know, it was a small guy, it was a tall guy, all of these different things. But has there been any of that, any species talk from these people?
Obviously the Greys.
The Greys is like
it's almost a unanimous.
Almost unanimous.
Yeah.
Short Greys or tall Greys?
Short and tall.
Short and tall Greys.
You know, it's funny. I just want to make this observation. The fact that Dr. Eric Davis, a hugely respected physicist, who is making an assertion that he has been briefed by a former president, Herbert Walker Bush, about
mantids, reptilians,
Nordics. It's mind-blowing.
They're typically the multiple species people are familiar with, the Greys, the Nordics. People have talked about reptilians and insectoids. It's not that they're reptilian or insectoid, it's that they resemble to the recipient of reptile or an insect type.
And this is the thing that I wrestle with as a journalist, that this is on the record. I can't remember if he did it under oath or not.
It was there were members of Congress present.
Yeah. But, you know, he could be, I mean, even if it's not under oath, he could be accused of misleading Congress, or you know, if he lied. David Grush did it under oath, you know.
Why under oath? It doesn't matter.
At what point does the institutional legacy media go, ooh, there might be a story here?
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing I just don't get, is the glacial slowness with which the legacy media is even beginning to address this issue. It should be, I mean, we're way past the probative basis for taking this seriously now. It's so obvious that there's a there.
Yeah. But
what's going on?
But
why?
How much of a there is there?
Yeah. I mean, look at, for example, what's happening with the Epstein files at the moment. Congress has developed a momentum with the Epstein files, and they would say it's because of what's been revealed in those files. And yes, what's being revealed in those files is pretty disgusting. But the interesting thing is, what's been revealed in UAP testimony under oath, deposed witnesses giving evidence to Congress. David Grush, a former very senior intelligence officer, giving evidence under oath to Congress. And I know multiple witnesses who've not yet become known to the public, to the media, who've given evidence to the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the HASC.
First-hand witnesses.
The Oversight. There's been a lot more witnesses who've given evidence that have been publicly disclosed. And I'm perplexed as to why these committees haven't developed more fangs to go and chase down the information that they've been given. David Grush has given them the times, dates, places, locations, names, literally the door numbers. Go and open this door and have a look.
Is that disheartening to him?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not speaking out of turn. I'm sure he's finding it as frustrating as we all are. And I think the simple problem is that what's happened is there's been an incredible power play behind the scenes where certain key senators in particular, majority leaders, have been taken aside and discreetly spoken to.
Yeah, they are.
And they're just given enough privileged information because information is currency.
How many syllables in his name?
But what that's done is it's shut down Congress momentum. And so we were going really well towards the end of last year. It was looking like we were going to get disclosure laws, new disclosure laws that were absolutely essential. I mean, there are contractors I'm talking to, people who are not Defense Department employees or intelligence community employees, and people don't understand this. They don't get the protections, the whistleblower protections that exist under the current laws. One of, in my view, the most important parts of this new legislation was to extend those protections to contractors and make sure that contractors were given the same protection. So if you're somebody working for, let's say, Northrop...
That's why they're having more contractors do this stuff military. It's because contractors aren't beholden to Congress or government oversight. That's good cheat. They're using a cheat. And contractors do that like that, but those contractors are former military people as well, and so which I don't like contractors that much. I think that they believe more in dictatorship type of stuff, but that's why they use more and more stuff going to contractors, because when you're talking about the military, that's, Constitution and everything else, and by law. They're supposed to have government oversight. These contractors don't have to. It's a cheat, and so, be right back. I need to take a leak.
Grumman. Did I say Northrop Grumman?
Yes.
Lockheed Martin.
Right.
If you want some of those people to come forward, you need to give them protections, because they have to feel that they will be legally protected, that they're not going to be punished, and that there will be a sanction against any institution that tries to punish them for speaking publicly.
I feel like I'm kind of reading between the lines here, but Jake Barber, is there a reason why he stopped sort of his initial push? He had this momentum after your interview, and it was made quite a splash, and it placed a lot of things, and Northrop Grumman came up quite a lot, and the following discussions after that, and this range, and this these things happening over there. Do you know the reason why Jake has sort of opted out of his initial?
You say he's opted out.
Well, publicly, at least.
Yeah,
it feels that way.
I don't think he's opted out at all. I think he's done all he can do within the law.
Yeah. Within the law, I see.
So for somebody like him, he's, at our instigation, we said to him, would you testify? Would you be willing to testify to the Congress? And he said, yeah, sure. So we filmed him going to the Congress and giving...
Retarded. Why they're so stupid. Where they think, going under oath means anything. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that you're to tell the truth. It means shit. Just like people lie all the time under oath, all the time. It isn't going to make you compelled to speak any differently unless you're really, really truthfully religious and afraid that God's going to kill you if you lie. And even then, there have been people that were supposedly really religious and still lied or whatever because the oath that they gave to president, country, and national security and everything. So that's just
of his evidence. He gave them chapter and verse on what he knows. They know who he's talking about, and he's described to them the details of, for example, the blue on blue incident that's been talked about. He's talked about the incident where he believes he and his team, a special operations team, was set up. They believe that they were the subject of an attempt by a private corporation to murder them. It doesn't get much more serious than that.
It doesn't.
And if you're Jake Barber, there becomes a point where it frankly doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would you?
Yeah.
Why stick your head up?
Yeah, you've done quite a bit.
If Congress isn't going to show the spine to follow this up, the will, it's pretty easy to get an impression of what's really going on in Congress. And if you get the impression that political leaders are just treading water, they're not taking this seriously, they're just humoring the media. I mean, there are good people in Congress. We all know them. A lot of the key members of the UFO UAP caucus, they're doing the right thing, pushing for disclosure, but they're not powerful people in the Congress. It's the gatekeepers in the Congress, the opinion leaders, the people who control the numbers, who have to be swayed. And at the moment, they've made a calculated decision based on, I think, a lot of...
Well, again, what they do is that they brief people at high closed doors, which is... It should be illegal. It's also illegal to keep things from the public. It's like a made-up thing that they have, where you can't talk about secret stuff. It's a made-up type thing. And people have every right to know what's going on behind closed doors with these classified briefings. They do that on purpose with people in Congress so they can't talk about stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that they do know. The juice stuff people have a right to know, should know about, is behind closed doors and stuff like that. And Congress is full of liars, deceivers, and are always like there are psychopathic liars.
Of lobbying from the defense and intelligence community to quietly sit down and quietly go quiet.
Do you believe that some of the people you've spoken to, Jake included, David Grush included, are closer to the program than they let on?
I can't say.
Well, I think you just did.
Yeah, I can't say.
Okay.
I mean, what I can tell you is I became aware of David Grush from people in the program. they said to me, you need to find out about this guy.
I see.
He's asking good questions. He seems really well motivated.
That this public-facing cover might be not as, might be just some type of like surface cover to allow them to give out some information, but that in reality they might be a little bit deeper into the program.
I don't buy the line that Jake or David are part of a controlled disclosure.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking if what they've disclosed, they might know a lot more than they're letting.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in no doubt about
and might be involved a lot more.
No, and I think particularly David. I mean, David, frankly, was cleared unbelievable. I mean, I'm privy to information from sources unrelated to David. When I was checking David out,
that had mentioned him.
There were people who were in awe of David Grush.
Wow.
I mean, literally, David was carrying the presidential daily brief and secret documents to the White House on a train with a colleague escorting him. I mean, that's how trusted he was. He had knowledge of, I think, over 2,000 special access programs, right up to WUSAPs. He was one of the most highly cleared people in the Defense Department for secrets. So he's privy to a lot of programs. And the really interesting thing is, when you look at how he came to the realization, working with the UAP task force, that there was this parallel program that had been kept secret from him, it blew him away. He had not the conceit, but he had the strong belief that he'd know about it. Of course he'd know about it. I'm cleared for all of these secrets. Why don't I know about this? And then when he asked friends of his, literally in the cafeteria at the Pentagon, what do you know about this claim about a legacy program involving UFOs? And people sort of gave him a bit of a nudge. And then he realized it was real.
I can't believe people are so retarded sometimes where, I just have to say, it pisses me off always that people are so dumb that they didn't know about this. You don't need the government to tell you should know this already, because a lot of government lies anyway. I've always known about the truth. I don't need some stupid people, liars in government, or deceivers, from, special access programs to tell me. I'm not saying Dave Rush Barber is, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, the people in here could also lie to you as well. And everything, information that I've come to know is from people, not just in the government, but also normal, everyday people. And a lot of them I trust more than government people. And stuff is so stupid and ridiculous that they have to have the government, the biggest deceivers and liars there are, to tell them whether states are real or not. That's true retardation.
That's the interesting thing is, I was going to tell you earlier, one of the people that I've met in the course of my investigations is a former very senior official at NASA. And they are an absolute luminary of the defence establishment, somebody who you would automatically think would have been read in to the program because of the roles that they played at the level that they played in the Defence Department. This is somebody who worked at an extremely high level in NASA and also went and worked at an extremely high senior executive level in the Defence Department. And miraculously, they agreed to speak to me, and they said, look, Ross, if this is true, I promise you, I do not know anything about this. And I became aware of the fact that the person 3 rungs down from him in NASA was the gatekeeper for the legacy program. And this was a person who was in charge. I just recently found this out. This was a person who was in charge of a lunar reconnaissance mission that's incredibly significant in terms of anomalies on the moon. And
That's one reason why I don't go
What
there.
freaked me out,
I have to say it's one reason why, we're not publicly on there, is because of UFOs are always following us on there, and they don't want that shown on camera. With the Apollo landings, that there are UFOs, so many UFOs around the capsule, so.
was the realization that this is so controlled and so clever that you can have the person who's almost at the apex of the entity completely oblivious and unaware of the fact that there is this secret program that's, I believe very strongly, hiding from the public knowledge of things that NASA has seen over the years and obscuring photographs and hiding data. I know.
How many people do you think are involved in something like that? Like, okay, at the tip, I've heard numbers anywhere up to like 24, or like this is, at the very tip. But just beneath that, like what would have to be? I mean, thousands, right?
There would have to be thousands now who are read in. I mean,
that's an inconceivable number for people to think about. But obviously, if we go back to Manhattan Project, there was, 130,000 people involved.
For the people who say that it couldn't possibly be kept secret, the Manhattan Project is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Were it not for Klaus Fuchs, who was the Russian spy who penetrated the Manhattan Project, it might have stayed secret for a lot longer from the Soviets. But the simple fact is, one traitor can blow this. And I can tell you the level of surveillance in the legacy program is just insane.
How do you know that?
Because of the measures that my sources require me to go to, the techniques that I have to use in order to communicate with them.
Have you ever caught them sort of listening in on you? Have you ever had an instance where you're like, "Oh, I see you there," and they kind of run off, or like?
No. I mean, these people are patriots.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I feel an enormous sense of responsibility about is these are good people.
They want to serve their country.
They want to serve their country, and they're proud of what they're doing.
Of course, as the people who worked on the atomic bomb were proud, and they were also heroes.
Yeah, and what they feel is that this is a program where the reason for the secrecy...
That's the thing. I would be proud that I'm pissed that, the psychopaths that are running this government and the criminal activity. That's not something to be proud of. That's something to be pissed off about. It's criminals that are running this government, the worst, and everything. I'll just stop it right here for now because nobody's watching. But that's part one. Oh shit. Goddamn keyboard. Can't keep up, be typing fast at this. Get that right there. Let's see here. Let's see. Do I have it right? Let's see. There it is. Alright. I think I ended it here though. I do so people can chime in, but I see YouTube does not like to give you visibility. That's probably because of the fact that I know stuff and everything, so hope everyone has a good morning tonight. I'll do part 2 later. I want to do some gaming stuff as well. Peace out, lots of love, stay safe everybody.